Hello and welcome to Your Schools. I'm your host, Lynn Turner Fitzgerald. Joe Halligan joins me today. Joe is with School District 2. He is the head of safety for the district. And you're going to have to repeat your title, Joe, because I kind of forgot.
Yeah, I didn't come up with the title, but the title that I was given upon hire is School Safety and Emergency Management Coordinator.
Okay, says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so prior to the interview, we were talking, and I'm surprised to learn that this is a pretty relatively new position within School District 2. What's the history?
Correct. So I started this position October 23 of 2023, so I've only been here about 8 months. Prior to that, my predecessor was hired around the February 23 mark, and so he served several months, and then again, prior to that, the position didn't exist. The work was being done by a couple of people in the district, but it's just too much for someone to have as an add-on to their already busy position. So,
right.
Yeah, this position itself is just over a year old.
So, how many schools are in the district? How many campuses do we have?
So we have 22 elementaries, we have 6 middle schools, and we have 4 high schools.
Okay.
And then add Lincoln Center to that. That counts
as
a school. Rimrock Learning Center. So we're upwards of 36 school buildings.
Well, is there a daily routine for you, or how do you monitor that much acreage?
Well, that is a challenge, but at the same time, I really appreciate the autonomy that I have to kind of dictate my schedule, how much time is being spent in the office. I try to be out in the field, in the schools, at least 50% of my time throughout the week. And really, yes, there are intentional visits that I make in response to different activity that may be happening at the school level,
right,
regarding safety and security, but more it's just me being a presence in the school, getting to know the teachers, getting to know the principals better,
right,
and then just again being visible in the schools. I know a lot of kids just from my 25 years as a teacher and administrator, so it's fun to be in the buildings and still interacting with kids and students and administrators in this capacity. So,
yeah.
And then the other part of my job, there is a lot of office stuff that has to happen outside of work hours, just because there is a lot to do in this district.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's kind of a 30,000 foot view of how I spend my days and weeks. Is just 50% of the time is in the field, about the other half in the office.
Okay, to be clear, you are not a school resource officer.
I am not a school resource officer. I
Okay.
work very closely with the 9 of our resource officers, Sergeant Cheney and I, who's the SRO sergeant for the 8 guys who are out in our schools. He and I work very closely on a day-to-day basis, just helping to take care of the things that are cropping up in our schools. But
right.
No, I am not a school resource officer, nor do I supervise them.
And so the school resource officers, that's a function of Billings Police.
Yep, Billings Police has entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Billings Public Schools. We're going on just over a 30-year partnership with Billings Police. They have taken really good care of us. We are just grateful for the service that they give to our schools. So, yeah.
Well, that seems, though, with only 8 active resource officers and 40-some campuses, how do they spread their time?
So we definitely focus our resources on those high needs areas, specifically the high schools. So we have designated school resource officers for senior high, West High, Skyview, and the Career Center.
Okay.
And then at the middle school level, that's kind of where we spread the load across the board there. So at Riverside, we have a designated. Lewis and Clark, we have a designated. And then Medicine Crow and Castle Rock share an officer. Ben Steele and Will James share an officer. And then, yeah, that's 6. So,
well, again, we were talking about this being a fairly new position. What's the rest of Montana doing for the AA schools? Do they have your position?
That's a great question, and the quick answer is not that I'm aware. I've reached out several times to different districts, just trying to find out, because I'm learning this position.
Sure.
Being only 8 months in the position, while I have a lot of experience in the education world, it's just not in this world.
It's not the same.
Yeah, it's not the same. So what I have found in talking with some other AA districts is this position just doesn't exist in a lot of the other school districts. As a specific school safety director, whatever you want to call it.
Standalone position.
Yeah, that position
right.
just doesn't exist in a lot of schools.
What about the rest of the country?
I think more and more it's becoming more of a priority.
Uh-huh.
That's again one thing I appreciate about Dr. Garcia since he came into the district. One of his pillars is school safety and ensuring the safety and well-being of our students and staff. And so, by him placing that emphasis and importance on school safety, just me being in my position is evidence of that. You know, if we're gonna say it's important, we darn well better do some things that communicate that it's important.
Right. Well, what do you look for? What are the red flags that may trip you to take some action?
Another good question. When I was literally 2 weeks into the position, I had the opportunity to work with a team that came in from Michigan. A group from Secure Environment Consultants came in to do a comprehensive audit of all of our 36 buildings. Mm-hmm. And what that team did, there were four gentlemen who came in and they did walkthroughs over the course of 3 days in all our schools. And so I learned a lot from them. I was with one of them each day, throughout the schools. And so helping to identify just the physical things in our schools, the things that we can do to physically harden the safety and security of our buildings, from locked doors, locked windows, points of entry, access control, even things like the position of bike racks where they're placed on a school campus. It's things you don't think about unless you're really looking at it. So when we have people, and sadly we live in a time when there are people who want to do bad things, and so as I bring up the bike racks, if you think about bike racks right by a playground, I mean that's an easy vulnerable target for somebody who's wanting to perpetrate bad
Well, there's no
behavior.
protection behind a bike rack. It's
Right.
pretty open metal, isn't it?
Well, yes, but that's so my point is, as kids are coming to school or leaving for school, if somebody wanted to hurt a bunch of kids, I mean,
Okay.
and again, not trying to plant seeds or put
No,
ideas in people's heads, but it's just that.
Unfortunately, it's a reality.
Yep, and a lot of people don't like to think about it. And in my world, and this is kind of a message that I try and convey to the folks that I work with, is in this world we have to train for reality. Mm-hmm. We can't train for comfort. And I think that's a paradigm shift for a lot of people. There aren't a lot of educators who went into this business thinking they would be participating in armed intruder training and worrying about how they're going to harden their classrooms to protect themselves and their students from people who want to do bad things. So it's just a different time.
Well, again, I'm going to go back to the red flags that maybe would propel you into action, or is that something that maybe you don't want to reveal?
Yeah,
and that I get it if you don't.
Yeah. There's really a fine line there, because while we want to ensure the community that our campuses are safe, I also don't want to we don't want to talk about the chinks in the armor, if you will. And so as I walk around campuses, I do look for those vulnerabilities. Just easy access to soft targets, and so and I guess I can point something out that's very safety related, but maybe not at the perpetrator level. But we have a lot of buildings as they're designed, and unfortunately this is just part of how buildings are built and the mechanical infrastructure is in place. But we have lots of buildings where it's because of the infrastructure, like the HVAC systems, it's easy to gain access to school roofs.
Okay.
And so, I mean, that's just one thing we look at, from the school safety standpoint. If you got a chain link fence surrounding an HVAC unit, but yet that chain link fence is only 4 feet away from the roof access, that's something we have to deal with occasionally.
Wow.
Is kids community members, using those access points to mess around on the roofs of our schools.
Right. Now, what about on the cyber side of things? Is that also your territory?
So I do some work with the CISA, or the cybersecurity world. Mm-hmm. Our technology director, Jason Platt, and his team also are a big part of that. And so while I'm not doing day-to-day monitoring of potential cyber threats, we do have people who are constantly monitoring the traffic in our system, especially those people who are trying to infiltrate and pose as good players, but are actually bad actors. And so, from the cybersecurity, we have that plan in place as well.
So, okay, I'm thinking about the population, the student population in the schools. Mm-hmm. How involved are the teachers in helping identify potential problems or issues?
teachers are really our first and best line of defense when it comes to helping us to identify kids who are potential risks, simply because of that relational piece.
They see them every day.
Every day, they spend hours with them, especially at the elementary level. Aside from parents, moms and dads, our teachers know our kids the best, and so administrators, same thing. We have fantastic school administrators in this town, and so from a relational standpoint, that's really where we gain the most insight into the potential of student behavior escalating to the point of being something we need to be highly concerned about.
What about students who drop out? Is there any way to monitor them?
It's difficult to monitor them simply because when they drop out of our system, they kind of blip off the radar,
right.
And that is unfortunate. I commend this administration, from Dr. Garcia to the executive directors, just the work they've done to try and re-engage some of those kids who dropped out. When we're talking a couple hundred kids every year dropping out of our school system, I mean, we know realistically what the outcome is likely to be for a lot of those students, and so.
Right. And I know Dr. Garcia on this program has addressed that as well.
Absolutely.
And it's a priority for him to bring those students back and let them feel like they belong.
Right, and give them a path forward. It may not be a traditional classroom, but giving them that's why I love what he's offered with our opportunity campus that's coming in the fall. I mean, they've created pathways forward for students who just don't thrive in a traditional classroom.
Okay, so I'm going to shift it over to gangs. Do you monitor that activity through the police department, or do you have access to knowledge of the goings on?
On a limited basis.
Okay.
I will say I'm confident in our Billings law enforcement and their knowledge of the goings on and just the happenings of gang activity in Billings. I'm sure we have people in Billings who think that gang activity doesn't exist in this community, and that's the wrong assessment.
Right.
It's prevalent. It's here.
Youth and adult.
Absolutely. So again, our school resource officers are very well dialed into the activity and who's involved. They know the names. They know the affiliations. And so, yes, they do monitor that very closely.
You said you were at a national convention not too long ago. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so I was fortunate to be able to attend the National School Threat Conference in Phoenix in December. And so I was only roughly a month and a half on the job before I was given that opportunity. And so that's really just meeting in a large group with other school resource officers, emergency management planners, safety directors, guys like me, gals like me, and really just looking at taking a very deep dive into some of the things that are of most concern at the school level in this day and age. And so, great 3-day conference.
Probably a little eye-opening, I would
For
imagine.
me at that point, yeah. Like I said, I have 25 years experience in the classroom and as a building administrator, but looking at things from this perspective is much different than being a building principal.
Well, let's dial it back to when you were an educator, when you were in the district as a teacher. What has changed in your mind, and again, in terms of the safety of campuses and students?
Well, I think before the interview we talked about the mental health piece.
Yep.
That's a big part of it. I personally feel like the breakdown of the family plays a huge role in just where we're at as a society. And so again, my goal is not to get political, but there is value in having a stable home life, whether that's a mom and dad, a single parent, whatever you want to call it. So I do feel like the breakdown of the family component has had a lot in play. Our district handbook emphasizes.
You're not going to blame social media? It was a perfect opportunity. I just laid it out there for you.
Yeah, you really did. You really did. Maybe I was circling back around to it because yes, that's a big problem. But I was just mentioning in our district handbook, we give parents that credit that they are the first teachers.
Right.
They are really where that foundation is started and built upon when it comes to sending their kids to school. And then, yes, starting very early on, I mean, 8, 9, 10 years old, we're starting to see, kids access 24-hour access to whatever is out there on the internet.
Everything is out there.
From the social media and to pornography. You mentioned you have a grandson in middle school, so I'm sure he's in that world of having access to those things, or at least his friends do. And I raised 2 boys kind of in the beginning stages, so my wife and I were fortunate in a couple of ways. Just it wasn't quite as entrenched as it is today, but yeah, there is. I would go as far as to say that a lot of our kids are addicted to that little handheld computer in their hands. So
yeah, and there's talk now that the companies behind the content are very much aware of their addiction.
Absolutely.
And they rely on that.
Absolutely, they do. Yeah, as a building principal, I would say easily more than half of what we dealt with on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis had some nexus in a social media platform or activity outside of school over social media.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. It's tragic.
Well, let's go back to parents, because I'm wondering if there's an occasion when a parent would need to talk to you or the resource officers. What's that process look like?
So there are really 2 ways that can happen. One, because of student behavior, that conversation can happen much sooner than maybe a parent would want.
And maybe initiated by the district. And
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one way it would happen. And then from the prevention side of things, our school resource officers are so willing to partner with schools and parents. I mean, these guys are. This is what they enjoy, and it's not for everybody. Not every cop can do an SRO's job, and so I hand it to our cops, because as I see them out there in the schools, rubbing shoulders with kids, they are an ally. They are trying to build a perception in the eyes of all of our students and community members that they really are a resource. They are not the bad guys.
Well, and I would think that would have a positive impact on students who have daily encounters with these officers in the school.
Absolutely.
So they have a different opinion growing up. Oh, wait a minute, this guy's here to help me.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, and we have parents reach out often, looking for different levels of support. There are things that as a district we can offer our parents, from recommendations for mental health supports and different services within the community, but our school resource officers have a different set of resources and ideas they can provide parents from that law enforcement side of things.
Right.
So yeah, parents are welcome to access our school resource officers anytime.
I want to go back to the mental health component too. I'm wondering, in the district, is there help available for a student who may need it?
Oh yes, yeah. We have obviously we have school counselors in most, if not all, of our schools. But sadly, we don't have the funding and resources to provide some of the mental health services that are required from our kids, or of our kids.
And that's statewide.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's all
probably
across
nationwide.
Montana.
Yeah. So our crisis teams, our counseling teams, I think they do the best job they possibly can, given the time and resources they have. When you have two counselors in a middle school of upwards of 800 kids, it's very difficult to take a deep dive into the mental health world and challenges of some of our students. So thankfully, we do have some community partnerships through Riverstone Health and our local hospitals who, when we get to that crisis moment where it reaches beyond what a typical school counselor should be doing, we're able to. And again, this is kind of that partnership with SROs as well. So with law enforcement, with our school counselors, and with our community partners, we're able to wrap that kid up as tight as we can. Sadly, it may be weeks or months down the road before that kid can truly get in to see a consistent person. But thankfully, we do have a pretty robust emergency response system when it comes to the mental health challenges. But again, because of the shortage of the people, sometimes it takes some time to get kids into seeing somebody on a consistent basis.
Now, wasn't there a levy that recently failed that would have addressed more school safety?
Yeah, unfortunately, our community made it very abundantly clear that they just weren't ready to pass a levy. The dollar amount, in my mind, was pretty small. These are what we were asking for was just some additional funding to help us, again, increase the physical security of our buildings from the
Is that cameras, alarms,
intercom systems,
Okay.
alarm systems, all that, the access control, visitor management, some of those things. We were looking at being able to use some of those resources for some character development stuff, particularly gang resistance education, just targeting some of our younger kids early on to help them understand that there is a different pathway should they be given, the choice. And then yes, there was that mental health component as well, hiring some additional mental health counselors. And I think that can be a controversial topic, just simply because I think there are lots of folks out there who feel that the mental health of their child is more their responsibility, and why are you meddling in our affairs? Well, it's reality. We spend sometimes in a lot of cases a lot more time with their kids than even they do at times.
Right.
I mean, as far as the waking hours go, and so and I'm not trying to discredit what parents do, because our job as parents, again, first and foremost, is building that foundation and supporting our kids with everything. And so while it sometimes may be difficult to look to the schools to provide those resources, in some cases that may be the only resource they have.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so of the items covered that the levy would have covered, is there one that stands out as the most important, or are they all just connected?
I think they're all connected in ways. As I looked at this levy and what it would provide for us, I kind of had three things in my mind, and that was I just used the 3 C's: cops, cameras, and communications.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, just in my experience being a principal and in education, having a City of Billings blue car parked out front of a school is a great deterrent for anyone, whether they just are coming in hot off the street and they want to, they're angry with a teacher or principal, or if it's somebody who's intending harm. Having that car
It's right there in the parking
in front
lot.
of the building, it's a message that says this school is protected,
Right.
and so you may not want to come in here. But so adding additional school resource officers, pretty high priority for me.
Okay.
And then, as far as the communications go, again, as I've learned in this position and in my past, having a functional intercom system in our buildings it absolutely has to.
They don't have them?
Well, most of our schools do. Yeah, I mean, all of our schools have an intercom system.
Yeah.
But over the course of the last 20, 25 years since installation of some of the older systems, I mean, we do have systems in place that were probably from the 60s. When I started at Broadwater in 2011, we were still operating off of probably a 1960, 61
Gotcha.
intercom system. And
Okay.
so, I played a little xylophone before we made our announcements, but not really. But thankfully, our facilities director has done a great job of just kind of monitoring this. He's worked with some different firms throughout the City of Billings to create a plan that just makes sure that we're maintaining and installing new stuff. And so, but we do have some chinks in the armor, as I mentioned, in our buildings.
Well, would that include instant communication with your office in the event of something happening?
So instant communication with my office, thankfully, we do have we have a method to make that happen. All of our schools, particularly our administrators, do have district issued radios. We have a very robust communication system when it comes to the handheld radios. While there are some dead spots in some different buildings where you might be behind a lot of concrete and steel, that may cause some problems. But by and large, because we have some systems in place here at Lincoln Center, as far as redundancy goes, all of our principals can reach one of us any time of day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that can happen in an instant. And the second part of that, and this is something that we've been able to accomplish over the last really month and a half, we have a system in place now with our Billings Dispatch Center.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Where they are plugged into our frequencies.
Yeah, okay.
And so they're able to do the work that they do and toggle between, if they need to put a street officer in contact with the administrator at Lewis and Clark, it's a flip of a button.
Good. So in the last couple of minutes that we have, I was wondering about differences in procedures for, say, the elementary school, middle school, and high school from your perspective? Or is it all kind of the same deal?
I guess it depends on what we'd be talking about. If we take an altercation or an assault, for instance, how we deal with an assault with a third grader is obviously much different than with a junior or senior in high school.
Sure.
And so depending on the level of infraction, but I will say where we are consistent across the board is when we conduct our behavioral threat assessments. We take that very seriously, and so whether it's a second or third grader making what probably is an impulsive comment about wanting to harm other people, or a 10th grader, 16, 17-year-old kid making a threat, saying they want to harm someone, I would say that consistent across the board, simply because we have to take those threats seriously.
Yeah, you do. All right, and my last question is, we talked a lot about during the school day, the activities that go on. What about security during the evening and overnights? Are the schools being watched then?
So we don't have specifically assigned officers for the overnight hours. We do utilize our school resource officers for after-school events, particularly crosstown games, football, basketball. We always have school resource officers present at those activities. I want to say there have been historically officers present at school dances when they're held on campus. And so yeah, our officers are willing to partner with us. That's overtime for them, and it's additional protection for us. And so, yeah, it's a great partnership. And I think just community-wide, our relationship with Billings Police Department, I do feel like those guys and gals do. I think they put some additional attention toward the schools when they're patrolling in the evenings.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good.
I think they run those neighborhoods and they keep an eye on what's happening in those areas.
Well, this has been very informative. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
I learned a lot.
Well, come talk to me anytime.
I will. All right. And thanks again for joining us.
Thank
you for joining us on Your Schools. Thanks for being here, Joe. And we'll see you next time. Have a great day.